The streets of Hollywood gleamed under the California sun, a city built on dreams, illusions, and secrets. It was a place where everything could be bought, but nothing was ever truly owned, not fame, not love, and certainly not truth. In the heart of this glamorous chaos stood Ariana Brooks, a 30-year-old actress whose name was whispered with reverence in every corner of the entertainment world. From the red carpets to the glittering events that marked the pinnacle of Hollywood's social scene, Ariana embodied the epitome of success. She was adored by her fans, admired by her peers, and envied by all who dreamed of walking in her shoes. But underneath her flawless exterior, hidden behind the glamorous facade, was a truth Ariana kept buried, locked away from the prying eyes of the public. The secrets she carried could tear her world apart. Ariana, the picture of perfection on screen, was anything but when the cameras stopped rolling. Her life was a carefully curated performance, a delicate dance between who she truly was and the image the world expected her to maintain. As the flashing bulbs of photographers captured her every move, Ariana smiled, radiant, untouched by the world's scrutiny. She had learned long ago how to wear her mask, one of innocence, grace, and the perfect blend of beauty and talent that Hollywood loved. Yet, with every smile she gave, there was an underlying tension in her eyes, a flicker of something deeper, something hidden. She had learned to perfect this duality, balancing the image of the wholesome, all-American girl that her public loved with the darker, more complicated reality that she had kept a secret for years. And it was this secret that haunted her more than anything else in her glittering world. In the world of Hollywood, where perfection was currency and even the smallest misstep could ruin a career, Ariana had learned to play the game. But she wasn't just an actress, she was a product, an image, a brand that needed to be sold and preserved at all costs. And that meant she had to bury her truth. Savannah Blake, 34, was the one person who knew that truth all too well. She was Ariana's manager, brilliant, ambitious, and fiercely protective of the star she'd helped build. But beyond the professional relationship, Savannah was also Ariana's secret lover, the one person in the world who knew who Ariana really was beneath the glitz and glamour. It was a love they could never show, a love that had to remain hidden in the shadows. If anyone found out, the delicate world Ariana had so carefully constructed would shatter into pieces. Savannah was no stranger to power. She had maneuvered through the cutthroat world of Hollywood with ease, shaping the careers of the biggest stars, guiding them through the chaos. She was used to controlling every aspect of a star's public persona, ensuring their success while shielding them from scandal. But this was different. This wasn't about crafting an image, it was about protecting a love that could destroy everything. Savannah loved Ariana deeply, but that love had become a burden. She had always known what was at stake, but as time passed, the weight of their secret relationship grew heavier. She had kept the truth hidden for so long, but now, the pressure of keeping it a secret was starting to chip away at her. She wanted to be honest with the world, to love Ariana openly, but she knew the consequences. Ariana's career, her image, everything they had built would be torn apart. It was the kind of pressure that only those who lived in the glare of Hollywood's spotlight could understand. The world demanded perfection, and behind every smile, every interview, every glamorous appearance, Ariana had to keep up the lie. But it wasn't just the public eye that she feared, it was the weight of her own fear. Fear of being rejected by her family, her friends, and by the world that loved her. Ariana had come from a small, conservative town, a place where her family's expectations were as heavy as the legacy they hoped she would uphold. They had always envisioned her as the perfect daughter, the girl who married the right man and followed the rules. But when Ariana left home for Hollywood, she left behind more than just her small-town roots. She left behind the person she had been expected to be. And in her place, the world saw Ariana Brooks, the beautiful, perfect actress who everyone admired. But the truth, the one thing she could never let slip, was that the real Ariana had no interest in playing the part of the perfect daughter. She had a secret that could never come to light. Ariana's family still didn't know the truth. They had no idea that she was in love with someone who was nothing like the men they had always expected her to be with. They had no idea that their daughter, the golden girl of Hollywood, was carrying a burden far heavier than any role she had ever played on screen. And it was this secret that kept her up at night, the fear that one day, someone, anyone, would uncover it and everything she had worked for would come crumbling down. The stakes had never been higher. Ariana was trapped in her own success, torn between the woman she loved and the persona the world demanded her to uphold. The carefully constructed life she'd built was beginning to unravel, and with each passing day, the tension grew. In the world of Hollywood, nothing was ever as it seemed, and Ariana Brooks was living proof of that. The relationship between Ariana Brooks and Savannah Blake had always been a complicated web of emotions, ambition, and hidden desires. From the outside, they appeared to be nothing more than a successful manager and her star client, two women bound together by the high demands of the entertainment industry. But beneath the surface, their connection was something far deeper, more intimate, and dangerous. Savannah had been with Ariana since the beginning of her career, long before the glossy magazine covers, the prestigious awards, and the multi-million-dollar contracts. She had seen Ariana through the early days of struggle, helping her navigate the treacherous waters of Hollywood with the sharp eye of someone who knew exactly how to play the game. But as Ariana's career soared to unimaginable heights, something shifted. What began as a professional bond slowly evolved into something more, something that neither woman had intended, but both needed. For Savannah, the transition from manager to lover had been subtle, like a slow burn. At first, she had seen Ariana as a project, someone to mold, shape, and protect. But as they spent more time together, as Ariana confided in her more and more, Savannah found herself drawn to her in ways she never expected. The vulnerability Ariana showed in private, her fears, her doubts, the way she let her guard down when they were alone, it was intoxicating. Savannah knew Ariana's public persona, the poised, perfect actress who always smiled, always said the right thing. But Savannah knew the real woman behind that facade, the woman who had fears, who had desires, who was, at the end of the day, just like everyone else. In turn, Ariana had become reliant on Savannah in ways that went beyond professional advice. Savannah was her anchor, the one person she could trust in a world where everyone wanted something from her. Ariana was used to being in control of her career, of her image, but when it came to her emotions, her desires, she found herself lost. Savannah was the only one who truly understood her, who could read her without her saying a word. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and it didn't take long before they both realized they were no longer just two women navigating Hollywood together, they were two women in love. But love in the entertainment industry was dangerous. It wasn't just about the feelings they shared, it was about what those feelings could cost them. Ariana's entire career, her carefully crafted image, was built on the perception of being the perfect woman, the girl next door, the sweetheart of Hollywood. If the world found out she was in a secret relationship with another woman, it could shatter everything. It could destroy her career, ruin her reputation, and leave her isolated. She couldn't let that happen. Savannah, too, had her own demons to wrestle with. She wasn't just Ariana's lover, she was her protector, her gatekeeper, the one who controlled how the world saw her. For years, she had skillfully maneuvered through Hollywood, keeping her own life in the shadows, carefully guarding her clients' secrets. But the secret of her love for Ariana was different. It wasn't just about keeping Ariana safe, it was about keeping herself safe, too. If anyone knew the truth, it would ruin everything for both of them. Hollywood didn't tolerate the kind of love they shared. And so, they lived in a fragile balance, one where every glance, every touch, every moment alone was precious and dangerous. In public, they were nothing more than professional colleagues. They kept their distance at parties, avoided being seen together in public, and made sure their private lives were never discussed. But in the privacy of their shared moments, they were everything to each other, passionate, desperate, and afraid. The secrecy was eating away at them both. Savannah could feel it more acutely than Ariana. As the months went by, it became harder to maintain the facade. The guilt, the longing, the fear of being caught, it was a constant weight on Savannah's shoulders. She could no longer ignore how the secrecy was eating at Ariana too. Ariana, despite her outward calm, was becoming more and more isolated, more withdrawn. The pressure of keeping their love a secret was starting to affect her, and Savannah could see it. Ariana tried to keep her professional life separate from her personal life, but the lines were blurring. The weight of maintaining the perfect image, the never-ending media scrutiny, the constant question of who she was dating, was it Ryan Stone, her handsome co-star? Was it someone else? Ariana was forced to play the game, to create false narratives that kept her personal life at bay. But it was becoming more difficult. She was tired of pretending, tired of hiding, tired of living a life that wasn't hers to live. At night, alone in her sleek Beverly Hills home, Ariana would look at herself in the mirror, questioning who she really was. Was she the woman the world adored, or was she the woman who loved another woman in secret? She felt torn, caught between the love she shared with Savannah and the world that demanded she be someone else. For Savannah, every moment spent with Ariana became both a blessing and a curse. She loved Ariana with all her heart, but the secrecy, the constant fear that something might slip, was suffocating. She wanted to be able to hold Ariana's hand in public, to kiss her without fear, to love her without hiding. But that was a luxury neither of them could afford. The tension between their public and private lives was becoming unbearable. Ariana knew that she couldn't continue living this double life forever, but the fear of what would happen if the truth came out kept her locked in place. Savannah, too, was becoming increasingly frustrated with the lies. She had given everything to help Ariana, but it seemed like the more she sacrificed, the more the pressure mounted. The cracks in their relationship were starting to show. The love that had once been so passionate, so all-consuming, was now overshadowed by fear, guilt, and the realization that their time together was running out. Something had to give, something was bound to break, and neither Ariana nor Savannah knew just how much longer they could hold on before the world discovered their secret. As they continued to navigate the minefield of Hollywood's expectations, they both knew that the price of their love could be more than either of them was willing to pay. The delicate balance between Ariana Brooks's career and her personal life was beginning to fracture, and the stress of maintaining the perfect image was starting to take a severe toll on her. Hollywood, the city of dreams and lies, demanded more from its stars than just talent. It demanded that they be more than human, that they maintain a flawless public image at all costs. Ariana had spent years cultivating the perfect image, one that projected innocence, grace, and a relatable charm that made her the sweetheart of Hollywood. But the truth was much darker, buried deep within her. Ariana's success in the industry had been hard-earned. She had come from a small, conservative town where her family's expectations were clear: follow the rules, marry well, and maintain an image of purity. But Hollywood was different. It offered a new life, one full of glitz, glamour, and possibilities, a chance to escape the narrow life her family had planned for her. She had worked tirelessly to reinvent herself, leaving behind her old identity to become the woman the world now adored. But in the process, she had also buried parts of herself that now ached to be free. Her relationship with Savannah Blake was one of those buried parts. It was an undeniable force, a connection so strong that Ariana couldn't simply let it go. But she had to, at least, in front of the world. If she didn't, everything she had worked for could be destroyed in an instant. The Hollywood spotlight didn't welcome love like hers, not in public. Lesbian relationships were still something to be whispered about behind closed doors, a scandal waiting to break. Ariana knew that if anyone discovered her love for Savannah, her career would be over. It wasn't just about the industry, it was about public perception. Her fan base adored her for the girl next door persona she embodied, and she feared that the truth of her secret relationship would shatter that image forever. Every day, Ariana found herself trapped in a never-ending cycle of balancing what she wanted with what she had to present to the world. She couldn't go to public events with Savannah by her side, couldn't hold her hand in public or share a kiss without fear of the consequences. Instead, she relied on a manufactured story, one where she was constantly seen with her co-star Ryan Stone, a handsome, charming man who became the perfect cover for her real feelings. Ryan, with his easy smiles and affable nature, was the perfect distraction. To the media, they were a couple in the making. To Ariana, he was the shield she needed to protect her heart, even if it felt like a betrayal to the woman she truly loved. But as Ariana spent more time with Ryan, something shifted within her. It was subtle at first, just a few moments of discomfort, a growing sense of unease. Then it became more apparent. She was beginning to lose herself in the performance. The act of pretending, of living this false life, was slowly eating away at her. She smiled for the cameras, gave interviews, attended premieres with Ryan by her side, all the while her thoughts were with Savannah. And yet, the more she distanced herself from her true self, the more she felt the pressure mounting. It wasn't just the facade that was weighing on Ariana, it was the constant fear of being found out. Every glance she gave Ryan felt like a betrayal to Savannah. Every conversation about her love life with reporters felt like an unbearable lie. The guilt gnawed at her constantly. She would come home at night, stand in front of the mirror, and wonder who she had become. The reflection staring back at her no longer felt like Ariana Brooks, the woman who had fought so hard to become a star. Instead, it felt like a stranger, someone who was losing touch with the woman she truly was. The stress was beginning to manifest physically. Ariana had always been careful with her image, managing her weight, her skin, her hair, everything was always meticulously planned. But now, the toll of hiding her truth was taking a visible toll on her. She found herself more fatigued than ever, her appetite waning, and her once vibrant eyes now shadowed with exhaustion. The joy she once felt in her work, the thrill of creating something beautiful, the satisfaction of receiving accolades for her talent, was now overshadowed by a deep, aching emptiness. She had become nothing more than a machine, pushing out performances, giving interviews, attending galas, all while her heart remained tethered to Savannah in secret. Ariana had always been able to compartmentalize her emotions, to keep them separate from her work. But now, the lines were blurring. The fear of being exposed was poisoning her ability to focus on her craft. She couldn't escape the nagging thought that at any moment, the truth would come crashing down. Every whisper in the press, every fleeting glance from a photographer, every new rumor about her love life made her feel as though the walls were closing in. The anxiety was suffocating. Behind closed doors, Ariana would allow herself to feel the full weight of her love for Savannah. She would close her eyes and remember the way Savannah touched her, the softness of her voice, the way she would laugh in private, the moments of real intimacy they shared. But those moments were fleeting, stolen in the quiet corners of their lives. Outside, Ariana was someone else entirely. She was the perfect starlet, the girl next door, the woman who could never be flawed in the public eye. The more she hid, the more she lost herself, and it was becoming harder and harder to keep up the act. Savannah could see it too. The cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. Ariana was slowly unraveling, and there was nothing Savannah could do to stop it. She had tried to be supportive, tried to remind Ariana of the importance of protecting her image, but the toll it was taking on her was undeniable. Savannah had spent so many years protecting other people's secrets, but now she was facing the truth. No amount of protection could save them from the pressures of Hollywood. The truth would eventually come to light, whether they were ready for it or not. For Ariana, the pressure of her double life was becoming unbearable. She knew that sooner or later, something would break. She wasn't sure if it would be her career, her love life, or her very sanity. But she couldn't continue living this way much longer. Something had to give, and Ariana could feel it in her bones. The walls were closing in, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep up the performance before the real Ariana, her true self, was revealed to the world. As Ariana Brooks continued to navigate the exhausting demands of her public life, a growing sense of unease settled between her and Savannah Blake. What had once been a slow, simmering tension between their secret love and the world they were trying to protect it from now began to boil over. The cracks that had been hidden under layers of carefully constructed facades were no longer something they could ignore. Savannah had always been the one to protect Ariana, to guide her through the tricky waters of Hollywood, but now she found herself in a position she couldn't control. The web they had built, this fragile illusion of a perfect life, was beginning to unravel, and Savannah could feel it tightening around her, suffocating both of them. Ariana's decision to grow closer to Ryan Stone, her handsome co-star, was the final straw. Savannah had always known that Ariana needed to maintain a certain public image, one that was acceptable, one that didn't raise questions. But now, Ariana was taking it a step further, allowing Ryan to step into the role that Savannah had long hoped would remain hers. The media buzzed with speculation about Ariana's romantic life, and the more she and Ryan appeared together, the more Savannah's fears grew. In public, Savannah maintained her composure, presenting herself as nothing more than the ever-efficient manager of the brightest star in Hollywood. But in the quiet moments, away from the cameras and prying eyes, the truth gnawed at her. Ariana was drifting away, slipping further into the arms of someone else, and the jealousy that had been simmering beneath the surface for months began to bubble over. Savannah tried to maintain control. She had always been the one who knew how to manage a crisis, how to handle the press, how to keep things under wraps. She had done it for years, saving her clients from public disasters and keeping their secrets safe. But this was different. This wasn't just about protecting a career, this was about protecting the love she felt for Ariana, the love that had become both a lifeline and a prison. Her mind raced with thoughts of what would happen if anyone found out, if the truth about their relationship ever surfaced. The fear of losing Ariana, of seeing her reputation destroyed, haunted Savannah daily. She had helped create the perfect image for Ariana, but now that image was beginning to crumble under the weight of their secret. The pressure of keeping it all together was breaking Savannah's resolve, and she felt herself becoming consumed by the very thing she had worked so hard to protect. One evening, after a particularly long and exhausting day at a promotional event, Savannah confronted Ariana in a rare moment of honesty. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension, their breaths shallow, their eyes searching for the words that neither of them could bring themselves to say. The night had been filled with laughter and smiles for the cameras, but underneath it all, Savannah had seen the distance growing between them. Ariana had kept her distance, giving Ryan more attention than ever, and Savannah could no longer pretend it didn't hurt. "Ariana, we need to talk," Savannah said, her voice strained, breaking the silence between them. She stood in the doorway of Ariana's dressing room, the light from the hallway spilling into the dimly lit space. Ariana didn't look up immediately, but the tension in her shoulders told Savannah all she needed to know. "I know what you're going to say," Ariana replied softly, her voice distant. She didn't meet Savannah's eyes as she continued to remove her makeup, her movements mechanical, as if she was trying to avoid the conversation that was inevitably coming. "No, you don't," Savannah snapped, unable to keep the edge from creeping into her voice. She stepped further into the room, closing the door behind her. "You think you do, but you don't. I've been patient with you, Ariana, I've given you the space to figure things out, but this is too much." Ariana finally turned to face her, and in her eyes, Savannah saw the conflict, the guilt, the fear, and something else she couldn't name. "I'm just trying to keep everything together, Savannah," Ariana whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose it all. I can't afford to." Savannah's heart ached as she looked at the woman she loved. Ariana was terrified. She was terrified of being exposed, terrified of the consequences, of what the world would think. And in that fear, she had started pushing Savannah away, letting Ryan take the place she had once held in Ariana's heart and in her life. Savannah couldn't bear it any longer. You think I'm not scared too? Savannah's voice shook as she stepped closer to Ariana. You think this doesn't eat me alive? You think I don't want to hold your hand in public, to kiss you like we're not hiding? I'm terrified, Ariana. But I've always stood by you. I've always protected you, even when it hurt. And now you're pushing me away for him. For Ryan. Ariana flinched at the mention of Ryan's name, and for a moment, there was a silence between them, a crack in the illusion. Savannah's words hung heavy in the air, and she watched as the walls Ariana had built around herself started to crumble, just a little. But Ariana wasn't ready to face the truth, not yet. I need him, Ariana said softly, almost as if she was trying to convince herself. He's the only way to keep people from talking. To keep the scandal away. Savannah's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Ariana saw the depth of the pain she had caused. You don't need him, Ariana. You need me. And I need you to stop hiding from us. This isn't just about your career, or what people think. It's about us. About what we are together. Ariana's gaze faltered. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. She knew what Savannah was saying was true, but she wasn't ready to face it, not yet. Savannah's heart broke as she looked at the woman she loved, knowing that no matter how hard she tried to hold on, no matter how much she begged for them to face the truth together, Ariana wasn't ready to let go of her carefully crafted image. She wasn't ready to stop running from herself. The tension in the room was unbearable, and Savannah, feeling the weight of everything they had been through, finally turned away. I can't keep doing this, Ariana. I can't keep hiding. I've given everything for you, and you've pushed me aside for the sake of a lie. As Savannah walked out of the room, she knew something had shifted between them. The delicate balance they had maintained for so long was finally starting to crack. And deep down, she knew that they couldn't keep living like this forever. The truth was coming, whether they were ready or not. The air was thick with tension, every breath feeling like a lead weight in Ariana's chest. Her mind raced, her thoughts spiraling out of control as she stared at Savannah Blake, who stood across from her, her eyes blazing with emotion. The conversation that had been simmering for weeks had finally reached its breaking point. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. It was time to face the truth. The walls of Ariana's carefully curated world had begun to crumble, piece by piece. She had tried to keep everything in place, to maintain the illusion of the perfect Hollywood life. But now, Savannah, her lover, her protector, the one person who had always understood her, was no longer willing to stand by in silence. The truth had to come out, and Ariana knew that there was no escaping it. Savannah's words had stung, leaving a mark deeper than Ariana was willing to admit. I can't keep doing this, Ariana. I can't keep hiding. I've given everything for you, and you've pushed me aside for the sake of a lie. Those words echoed in Ariana's mind, a constant reminder of the damage her fear had caused. She had pushed Savannah away, kept her at arm's length, all in the name of protecting her career, her image, and the life she had fought so hard to build. But now, as the weight of the situation settled around her, Ariana realized that she had lost something far more important than her public image. She had lost Savannah. Ariana's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to find the right words. But they eluded her, caught somewhere between the love she had for Savannah and the fear of what would happen if the truth came out. She opened her mouth, but only a hollow silence filled the room. She couldn't bring herself to say what was needed, the words that could bridge the distance between them, that could begin to heal the rift she had created. Savannah wasn't waiting for Ariana to speak. Her anger, her frustration, and her heartbreak had been building for too long, and now it all came rushing out. How long, Ariana? Savannah's voice was low, controlled, but the tremor of emotion was unmistakable. How long were you planning on pretending? How long were we supposed to keep living this lie? You've pushed me aside, put your career before us, before me. And for what? So you can hold hands with him in public? So you can pretend everything's fine while we both know it's falling apart? Ariana flinched at the words, the rawness of them cutting through her like a knife. She could feel the guilt rising up in her chest, threatening to choke her. She had been so afraid, so consumed by the pressure of maintaining her image, that she had failed to see how much she was hurting the one person who loved her unconditionally. It wasn't just the career she was protecting, it was the idea of perfection, the illusion of being someone she wasn't. And in doing so, she had pushed away the very person who had stood by her side through it all. Savannah, Ariana's voice cracked, but she couldn't finish the sentence. What could she say? How could she explain the fear that had held her hostage for so long? How could she apologize for the hurt she had caused, for the walls she had built between them? She wanted to reach out, to close the gap between them, but it felt as if an invisible wall had been erected, one that was now impossible to tear down. Savannah didn't give her the chance to finish. You think I don't know what's going on, Ariana? You think I don't see how you've been pulling away from me, how you've been leaning on Ryan instead of me? Savannah's words grew sharper, her anger mixing with the pain she was feeling. You've turned to him, someone who doesn't even know the real you, while I've been here, loving you, trying to keep everything together. And this is how you repay me? Ariana's stomach twisted with guilt. She had tried to convince herself that it was all for the best, that her relationship with Ryan, the public charade, was necessary to protect them both. But as she listened to Savannah's words, the truth was undeniable. She had pushed Savannah away. She had chosen the safety of a false image over the woman who truly loved her. And now, that choice was unraveling before her eyes. I never meant to hurt you, Savannah, Ariana whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. She took a step forward, but Savannah held up her hand, stopping her in her tracks. No, Savannah said sharply, her voice firm, but the pain was still there, simmering just beneath the surface. You've hurt me more than you realize, Ariana. Every time you pushed me aside, every time you chose him over me, you hurt me. And I can't keep pretending it's okay. I can't keep pretending that we're fine, when all I've done is try to protect you, to protect us, and all you've done is pull away. The weight of Savannah's words hung in the air, thick with the finality of the situation. Ariana's chest tightened as she realized just how far apart they had grown. The love they had shared, the passion and the connection, had been overshadowed by the lies and the fear. And now, it seemed as if there was no way back. I never wanted to lose you, Ariana said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought if I kept the world at bay, if I kept us hidden, we could survive this. But now, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make things right. Savannah's expression softened for just a moment, the anger in her eyes fading slightly, replaced by a deep sadness. I don't know if you can fix it, Ariana. I don't know if we can go back to what we were. I've been living in the shadows for so long, pretending that everything was fine, but it's not fine. And I can't keep doing this anymore. I can't keep loving someone who's too afraid to love me back in the way I deserve. Ariana's heart shattered as Savannah's words settled over her. The truth was undeniable, she had been too afraid to truly embrace their love, to truly be with Savannah without fear. Now, as the room grew colder and the distance between them grew wider, Ariana realized that the wall she had built to protect herself was now the very thing keeping them apart. And in that moment, Ariana knew that no matter what happened next, the world they had built together would never be the same again. The truth had come crashing down, and there was no going back. The evening air was thick with tension, the weight of unsaid words hanging heavy between Ariana Brooks and Savannah Blake. What had begun as a confrontation born from pain and betrayal was now spiraling into something far darker. The quiet moments of silence that had settled between them felt like a countdown, an inevitable conclusion looming over the room. For Ariana, the realization had hit hard, the fragile thread that had held their love together was now fraying, and no amount of words or promises could stitch it back together. Savannah stood by the window, her silhouette bathed in the dim light of the city outside. Her back was turned to Ariana, and for a brief moment, Ariana thought she could almost hear the silent thoughts racing through Savannah's mind. She could feel the distance growing, stretching between them like an ocean that neither could cross. The anger, the hurt, the rawness of their emotions had reached a tipping point, and it seemed that the fragile bond they had shared for so long was being torn apart. Ariana took a cautious step forward, but the movement felt mechanical, as if her body was betraying her own desires. She wanted to reach out, to pull Savannah back, to tell her that she still loved her, that she hadn't meant to hurt her. But the words felt empty, hollow in her throat. She had already said too much, said too little, and now, everything seemed irreparably broken. "You don't understand, Ariana." Savannah's voice cracked as she spoke, low and trembling with suppressed emotion. She still didn't turn around, keeping her gaze fixed on the lights outside. "You've spent so much time pretending, hiding. But I can't live in your lies anymore. I can't keep sacrificing myself for something that doesn't even feel real anymore." Ariana's heart clenched at the anguish in Savannah's voice. She had hurt her. She had destroyed the one thing in her life that had been constant, that had been a source of strength. The realization hit like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. She wanted to apologize, to make it right, but she knew, deep down, that there was no easy fix, no magic words that could erase the damage she had caused. "I never wanted this, Savannah," Ariana whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted to lose you. Please, don't leave me." Savannah turned slowly, her face pale, her eyes shadowed with an intensity that Ariana hadn't seen before. There was a coldness in Savannah's gaze now, something that spoke of heartbreak, of betrayal, and of something darker that was beginning to take root. Ariana felt a shiver crawl up her spine, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from Savannah's face. It was as if she were seeing her for the first time, her anger, her pain, her absolute determination to not be controlled anymore. "I don't know how to fix this," Savannah said softly, her voice heavy with finality. "But I can't keep pretending it's okay when it's not." The room seemed to shrink as Savannah took a step closer to Ariana. Every movement felt measured, deliberate, and for the first time, Ariana wasn't sure if she could reach her. Savannah was slipping away, and this time, Ariana wasn't sure if there was anything left that she could do to stop it. The silence was deafening. But then, Savannah spoke again, her words coming out in a rush, like the breaking of a dam. "You don't get it, Ariana. I gave up everything for you. My whole life, everything I've worked for, has been spent protecting you, keeping your secrets, keeping us hidden. But I'm tired. I'm tired of being your dirty little secret, tired of being the one who is always left in the shadows. I don't want to live like this anymore." The words hit Ariana like a slap in the face. Savannah's voice, thick with raw emotion, was the final blow. Ariana's eyes welled with tears, but she couldn't bring herself to say anything in return. Her throat was tight, the lump of guilt and regret choking her. This was it. She had pushed Savannah too far. And now, she was losing her. Savannah's eyes flashed with something else now, something darker, more desperate. Ariana couldn't quite place it at first, but the intensity in Savannah's gaze was unmistakable. There was a shift in the room, a palpable tension that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Savannah took another step forward, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. "I gave everything for you, Ariana," Savannah repeated, her voice dangerously low. "But what did you give me in return?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." In that moment, Ariana felt a surge of panic rise in her chest. Something in Savannah had shifted, and she wasn't sure if she could control it anymore. She reached out, her hand trembling as she tried to touch Savannah's arm, to stop her, to somehow calm her down. "Savannah, please, please don't do this. I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you, but I didn't mean to. I just—" Before she could finish, Savannah turned sharply, knocking Ariana's hand away with a force that sent her stumbling backward. The look on Savannah's face was no longer one of love or anguish, it was one of fury, of something broken inside her that Ariana couldn't fix. In a moment of pure rage, Savannah's hands shot out, grabbing the nearest object, a crystal vase from the table beside her. Without warning, she hurled it across the room. The vase shattered against the wall, the sound of breaking glass echoing in the small room like a gunshot. The noise was so loud, so sudden, it startled Ariana, sending her heart into overdrive. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched Savannah's eyes, wide and wild with emotion, flicker with a mix of grief and anger. Savannah's chest heaved as she stood there, breathing heavily, staring at the wreckage of the vase. The air between them was electric now, charged with so much unspoken pain that Ariana could almost taste it. She took a step back, her body tense, her mind reeling with the sudden shift in Savannah's demeanor. "I gave you everything," Savannah whispered, her voice trembling, "and this is how you repay me?" In that instant, Ariana realized that the situation had escalated beyond her control. The anger, the betrayal, the frustration, everything had built up to this moment, and now it was spiraling out of her reach. She wanted to stop it, wanted to say the right thing, but the words failed her. Then, in a moment of chaotic emotion, as if her body had acted without her mind's consent, Savannah's hand shot out, gripping Ariana's wrist with a fierceness that shocked her. Ariana tried to pull away, but it was too late. The intensity of the moment escalated, and in the frenzy, Ariana stumbled, her head striking the edge of the coffee table with a sickening crack. The world tilted as she fell, her vision blurring, the pain surging through her skull. The room went silent. Savannah froze, her hand still gripping Ariana's wrist, her eyes wide with shock. Ariana lay motionless on the floor, her body limp, the blood beginning to pool around her. The realization of what had just happened struck Savannah with a force that sent her crashing to her knees beside Ariana. She shook her, but Ariana didn't respond. The love that had once burned so brightly between them now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a devastating reality. And in that moment, Savannah knew, everything had changed. Everything was broken, and there was no going back. In the aftermath of that horrific night, when Savannah Blake realized the full extent of what had just happened, the world around her felt like it was spinning out of control. Ariana Brooks lay motionless on the floor, her head having struck the coffee table with such force that the impact sent shockwaves through Savannah's heart. She had only meant to confront, to express her pain, but now, the life she had built with Ariana, the love, the trust, the dreams, was shattered in the most irrevocable way. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the sound of Savannah's frantic breathing. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside Ariana, the gravity of the situation fully dawning on her. She had crossed a line that there was no coming back from. The woman she had loved, the woman who had once been the center of her world, now lay still, unmoving, in a pool of blood. Savannah's chest tightened as panic rose within her, choking her thoughts. She had to act. She had to do something. But what? The question echoed in her mind, but her body moved on its own, guided by a primal instinct to cover her tracks. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let it all come crumbling down in this way. This wasn't just a moment of violence, it was a complete destruction of everything she had built. The media would tear her apart, the police would investigate, and her career, her life, everything she had known, would be over. But she couldn't let that happen. Not like this. Not with Ariana's death hanging over her head. Savannah's heart raced as she stood, her mind calculating the next steps. She needed to act fast. The clock was ticking. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, suffocating her. She had to make it look like an accident. She had to clean up the scene, erase all evidence that would tie her to the crime. She had to get rid of any trace that could lead back to her, and she had to do it before anyone found out. Her mind whirled as she moved through the apartment, the edges of her vision starting to blur with the intensity of her thoughts. Her hands were shaking as she began to wipe down the surfaces, the cloth moving over the furniture, over the objects that might have her fingerprints on them. Every single detail mattered now. She could feel the weight of every movement, every second that ticked by. There could be no mistake. She grabbed the shattered vase, its pieces scattered across the floor. The sight of it made her stomach twist, but she knew it was a crucial part of her plan. She carefully picked up the jagged pieces, not caring that her hands were shaking, bloodied from the glass. She placed them on the nearby table, arranging them just so, in a way that would make it seem like a robbery had taken place. The shattered vase, the scattered jewelry on the floor, it would all point to a break-in. No one would suspect her. No one would ever know what had truly happened. Savannah's breathing grew heavier as the minutes passed. She felt as though the walls were closing in around her, the tension mounting with every passing moment. Her thoughts were racing, but she kept them focused on the task at hand. She couldn't let herself think about the truth, about what she had done. The reality of it, Ariana's life extinguished in an instant, was too much for her to bear. She had to push it aside, at least for now. Once she had cleared the immediate area of any evidence, she moved to the bedroom, grabbing some of Ariana's personal items, a few necklaces, a bracelet, and her phone. She took them, scattering them around the room to make it look like an intruder had rifled through Ariana's belongings. The more chaos she could create, the more convincing the scene would appear. It had to look like a random attack, a robbery gone wrong. It couldn't look like something personal. But even as she worked to clean up, a sense of dread lingered in her gut. She knew that no matter how well she covered her tracks, there would still be questions. There would still be investigators, media, prying eyes. Ariana's death was bound to draw attention, and the more time Savannah spent trying to control the scene, the more she realized how out of control she really was. The walls of her perfect world were closing in, and the burden of maintaining her innocence felt heavier with every breath. With everything in place, Savannah paused for a moment, her eyes darting around the room. Was it enough? Had she covered everything? Her mind raced, but she knew she couldn't afford to linger. She took one last look at Ariana, her heart aching at the sight of the woman who had meant everything to her, lying lifeless on the floor. But there was no time to mourn. Not now. Savannah made her way to the phone, dialing a number she knew all too well. She'd worked hard to build connections in the industry, and now, those connections were going to be her lifeline. She spoke quickly, quietly, giving just enough information to someone who could help her cover up the crime, someone who knew how to handle a high-profile case without drawing too much attention. "I need help," she whispered into the phone. "There's been an incident. It's bad. We need to make this go away. I can't be connected to this. No one can know." As the line clicked off, Savannah's stomach twisted into knots. The consequences of what she had just done were crashing over her, but she pushed them aside, focusing on the next step. She wasn't done yet. She had to make sure everything looked like an unfortunate accident, a tragic and unexpected loss. There could be no trace of her involvement, no connection between her and the death of the woman she had once loved. The next few hours felt like an eternity. The police would soon arrive. The world would soon find out about Ariana's death, but Savannah was determined to control the narrative. She couldn't afford to be caught, not when she had worked so hard to build the life she had. She had sacrificed too much for it to all come crashing down now. As the first signs of dawn began to break through the windows, Savannah stepped away from the apartment, her hands still trembling from the chaos of the night. She had covered her tracks as best she could. She had done what was necessary, or so she told herself. The hardest part, though, was still ahead. The investigation was just beginning, and she knew that no amount of preparation could fully protect her from what was to come. As the door to Ariana's apartment closed behind her, Savannah could feel the weight of her actions settle in her chest. It was only a matter of time before the truth would begin to unravel. But for now, she was alone in her lies, trapped in a world of her own making. And the worst part was, she wasn't sure if there was any way out. The days following Ariana Brooks's death were filled with frantic whispers and relentless media coverage. Headlines screamed about the beloved actress's tragic, untimely demise, while tabloids dived deep into the mystery of her personal life. The world wanted answers, and the public was hungry for scandal. But in the midst of the media frenzy, something darker was taking place in the background, something that no one could have anticipated. Savannah Blake had spent years crafting the perfect image for herself. She was a manager, a fixer, a master of keeping her clients out of the headlines for all the right reasons. She had been the one to protect Ariana from the harsh spotlight of Hollywood, to keep her secrets hidden, to ensure that no one ever knew what went on behind the scenes. But now, in the wake of Ariana's death, Savannah was trapped in the very web she had spent years weaving. The police had immediately launched an investigation into Ariana's death. The scene had been carefully manipulated, every detail arranged to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Broken glass, scattered personal items, and a messy apartment suggested a struggle. To the investigators, it seemed like a random act of violence, but something about the scene didn't sit right. Detectives were thorough, combing through Ariana's last known whereabouts, questioning anyone who might have had a motive, and sifting through evidence. Surveillance footage from nearby buildings placed Savannah's car near Ariana's apartment at the time of her death, a detail that seemed innocent enough at first. But when they started looking closer, they discovered discrepancies, something that suggested Savannah might not have been as uninvolved as she appeared. The media coverage intensified as the investigation dragged on. The public began to scrutinize Savannah's every move, speculating about her role in Ariana's life, and in her death. Once admired for her successful career and strong control over her clients' images, Savannah was now a figure of suspicion, with her every appearance in front of the cameras met with cautious curiosity. But even as the noose began to tighten around her, Savannah remained outwardly calm. She had worked in public relations long enough to know how to maintain an image, how to craft a narrative that would protect her from the harshest questions. She gave carefully rehearsed statements to the press, her grief evident but measured, carefully calculated. To the outside world, she was the grieving manager, a woman who had lost someone close to her, someone who had been her friend, her protégé, and her lover. But the cracks in her composure were starting to show. Behind closed doors, Savannah was unraveling. The weight of the lies she had told, the way she had manipulated every detail of the night Ariana died, was beginning to crush her. She had known how to lie to the world, but the constant guilt gnawed at her, keeping her awake at night. The walls she had built around herself, her carefully constructed facade, were starting to collapse, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. As the investigation continued, Claire Reed, a former actress and one of Ariana's closest friends, came forward with shocking information. Claire, who had been out of the spotlight for years, had once shared intimate moments with Ariana. The two women had been confidants, and Claire knew the truth about Ariana and Savannah's relationship. The public had no idea about the love they shared, but Claire did. She knew that the two women had been hiding their love from the world, and she couldn't remain silent any longer. During a press conference, Claire revealed everything she knew about Ariana and Savannah's secret relationship. Her testimony was filled with emotion, as she spoke of Ariana's struggles to live a double life, one where she had to hide her true self from the world. Claire's words shattered the carefully constructed narrative that Savannah had spent so many years building. The media, once focused solely on the tragedy of Ariana's death, now turned their attention to the hidden love story that had been kept from them. With Claire's testimony as a catalyst, the police launched a deeper investigation into Savannah's role in Ariana's death. They sifted through evidence, piecing together the inconsistencies in her alibi. Cell phone records showed that Savannah had made suspicious calls to Ariana just hours before the murder. A witness reported seeing her car parked near Ariana's building, contradicting the story she had told. Slowly, but surely, the truth began to surface. The trial was inevitable. In the courtroom, the prosecution painted a damning picture of Savannah's obsessive behavior, her control over Ariana, and her jealousy over the growing distance between them. Text messages and emails exchanged between the two women were presented as evidence, showing how Savannah had manipulated Ariana's life, her career, and her emotions. The defense tried to portray Savannah as a woman who had been blindsided by grief, but the jury was unconvinced. In the end, the verdict was clear. Savannah Blake was found guilty of second-degree murder. Her once stellar career, built on years of protecting the lives of Hollywood's elite, was over. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The public, once enamored by her strength and control, now saw her for what she truly was, a woman consumed by jealousy, obsession, and a love that had spiraled out of control. As Savannah was escorted from the courtroom in handcuffs, the weight of her actions finally hit her. She had lost everything, the woman she had loved, her career, her freedom, and now she was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. In the aftermath of the trial, Ariana's legacy lived on. She was remembered not just as a talented actress, but as a symbol of the struggles many people face in Hollywood, where personal identity and public image collide in dangerous ways. Her death sparked a conversation about the pressures of fame, the secrets people hide, and the cost of living in a world where truth is often sacrificed for the sake of success. What do you think about the tragic story of Ariana and Savannah? Do you believe Savannah's actions were driven by love, or was it something darker that led to the devastating outcome? How do you think society's pressure on public figures to maintain an image of perfection plays a role in stories like this? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about the twists and turns of this heartbreaking tale. Don't forget to like and share the video if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories.